I believe the best medical book that we have is the Bible. And in Psalm 119, verse 73, the psalmist says, "Thy hands have made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I might learn thy commandments." In other words, the great God of heaven made our bodies, he fashioned us, and he alone knows the conditions that our body needs. So what is the healing message from the Bible? In James chapter 5, verse 15, the Bible says, "If any among you are sick," so this is the question we want to know. What do we do? "If any among you are sick, let him call the elders of the church and let them pray over him, and let them anoint him with oil. And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise him up. And if he hath committed any sins, they shall be forgiven him." Then the next verse says, "Confess your faults one to another. Pray one for another. For the effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much." It is not enough to pray. When you pray for the sick, the Lord brings to the mind a simple natural treatment that can be applied. I believe is the recipe for healing. It's got everything that we need. It starts by saying the only hope of better things is the education of the people in the right principles. Let the physicians teach the people that restorative power lies not in drugs, but in nature. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that arise because of a violation of the laws of health, which I have written up here. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained, so the detective hat has to be put on. And that's why in Proverbs 26 verse 2 it says, "The curse causeless shall not come, there is always a reason." Job 29:16 says, "The cause I knew not, I searched out." Galatians 6 verse 7 says, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that he shall also reap." So the cause should be ascertained, wrong habits corrected, unhealthful conditions changed. Then nature is to be assisted in her efforts to expel impurities and re-establish right conditions back in the system, because the body's designed to heal itself. Pure air, sunlight, abstemishness or temperance, rest, exercise, proper diet, use of water, trust in divine powers, these are the true remedies. They're the remedies. When you have a look at the cause, just go through the 8 laws of health. And in the majority of cases, I find that here you will find where the cause is. Sometimes people are doing everything right, but they're so stressed out, they're so worried, fear. And of course, God has said in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, "I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." Trust in divine power is a very important part of health. In fact, Ellen White states in Mind Cure that 9/10 of all diseases have their source in the mind. So we need not to have fear. Remember, we need to have faith, and faith goes strong by earnest conflict with fear and doubt. All should become intelligent as to the human frame and how to keep it in the conditions necessary to do the work of the Lord. It is important both to understand the principles involved in the treatment of the sick and have a practical training that will enable one rightly to use this knowledge. And then it goes through the 8 laws of health in that passage. And then it says, nature's process of healing and upbuilding is gradual, and to the impatient it seems slow. And that's why at this stage I give the verses, Galatians 6 verse 9, "Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." The other verse is Hebrews 10:35, where it says, "Cast not away therefore thy confidence, in the which is great recompense of reward, for ye have need of patience, in that after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. Now the just shall live by faith. But if any man draw back, my soul have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them that draw back under perdition, but of them that believe in the saving of the soul." You see, the just shall live by faith. The use of natural remedies requires an amount of care and effort that many are not prepared to give. But in the end, it will be found that nature untrammeled does her work wisely and well. Those who persevere in obedience to her laws will reap the benefit in health of body and health of mind. So this goes beautifully hand in hand with what the Bible says. But unfortunately, many take for granted this running of the human body because the body bears long. And so in Psalm 119, verse 67, it says, "Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I have kept thy word." Many people don't think about the running of the human body and what to do when they get sick until they get sick. And so moving on a little bit more to verse 71, the psalmist says, "It's good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes." And then to 73, the verse I opened with me, "Thy hands have made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I might learn thy commandments," the laws that govern the functioning of the human body. Every home should have an anatomy and physiology book, because that's a book about us. And it talks about how our colon works, how our lungs work, how our stomach works. We need to have an understanding of that. And in Proverbs 14 verse 6, the Bible says, "Knowledge is easy to him that understands." It's important to understand the workings of these different organs and how they interact with each other so that we can have the knowledge on how to treat them. Transgression of physical law is transgression of the moral law. You see, God has written his law with his own finger on every nerve, every muscle, every faculty with which we have been entrusted, and any misuse of any part of our organism is a violation of that law. All should become intelligent as to the human frame and how to keep it in the condition necessary to do the work of the Lord. In this passage, that the relation that exists between the physical organism and the spiritual life is one of the most important branches of education, and I would like to add one of the most neglected. The physical organism should be carefully preserved and developed, that through humanity the divine nature might be revealed in all of its fullness. How often is God robbed of workers because the physical organism has gone down? And everything that happens in the physical organism affects mentally. And everything that's happening mentally affects the physical organism. So it's a whole package. And that's why these 8 laws of health are the true remedies.